Hello, everyone. Welcome in. Now the random noises in the program. Let's get that out of the way. I was streaming earlier today in horizontal, so kind of optimized for that. I've got another rock and pebble painting underway, and right now I am adding a wash with some ultramarine blue mixed in with some vermilion watercolor. We got the orange toned pebbles added in today, and after it dried down I took a look at it and thought it looked a bit like an elephant wearing a jack-o'-lantern costume. It was just way too orange, so I've mixed up a little wash here using a little bit of ultramarine blue that tones down that vermilion color nicely. And I thought while I was painting I'd just go ahead and start a live feed, see if there's anybody out there who was looking to spend a little bit of quiet time on a Saturday. If you're watching this on replay, you already know how long the stream is, but my intention is to go hour, maybe an hour and a half or so. I'm going to get this layer of wash put on, and then I will pull out some squares. We'll do some mindfulness pebble drawings, one of the 3x3 ones. If you've been to my channel before, you're probably familiar with those. I basically use a pigment pen to outline pebble shapes on a prepared background that's prepared with watercolors, pigment sticks such as gelatos or twistable colors, sometimes neocolor too. Just a little of this, a little of that to add some color. So, welcome in, everybody. So I'm just making efforts not to flood the large gray shapes, and I'm also working to keep a wet edge. With watercolors, when you let the edges dry, you end up with a line. And it's actually a pretty handy way to make a line, but that's not the effect I'm going for here, so. I'm going to move fairly quickly to just keep this working edge right here wet. And making some efforts not to get too much water on. When I do, you see the pigment gets re-wetted, and then it flows out to the area where the wash is wet. So I'd like these orange areas to stay distinct. I don't want that pigment to re-wet and to disperse into these intermediate areas too much, so I like the effect every once in a while so that we get a finished painting that looks like some pebbles and rocks that are in a body of water, where some of them, the orange ones, are going to look like they're underwater, and the larger gray stones, I want those to look like they're above the water. So I always have to hold my breath when I'm working on these washes. The paint goes on and it's darker than what you want when it dries down, so it can be a little bit nerve-wracking as you cover these areas up with color. Trying not to get too wild here. To find that sweet spot where I'm working quickly but deliberately without just splashing a wash over the top of everything. And this is just a little sketch. I'm not really aiming for too much perfection here, just a project to keep my hands busy today. I feel like I could be using a bit of a bigger brush here, but there's these little tight areas that need this. I've got a 0 round watercolor brush I'm working with at the moment. Welcome in, everybody. I just got that area that's just staying wet. Lift that color up a little bit, let it dry. I'll come back and overwork it later, as I do. Check every once in a while, make sure I'm not working too far out of frame there. So I hope everybody had a good week. We've made it through another one. Got ourselves to the weekend. Some weeks that takes some doing, so I hope you give yourself a little credit for that. And that's assuming that your weekend actually falls on a Saturday and Sunday. I know not everybody's does, so wherever you're at in your work week, I hope it's going well. I hope it went well. Up here in the northern hemisphere, we're working on fall. I was I was painting earlier this afternoon when there was a knock at my door, which doesn't happen very often because of phones, I think. And I was quite surprised to find my new neighbor on the porch with a pair of secateurs in her hand, and she said, "I hope you don't mind, but I've trimmed your roses." um, the, Her yard, they just moved in, and their yard doesn't have much in the way of landscaping. And her partner had warned me that she'd been eyeing my yard with the intent to come do some yard work. So um, that was very kind of her. She knew that I had had a cardiac procedure, and yard work is not on my list of things to do right now. So I actually took a break from the painting and um, put on my yard working shirt and went out, and we chatted and got to know each other a little bit. Um, I don't really know what to think about that. When somebody comes and just it's like, "Hi, I've done your work for you." It's a little wild. Manning ate. Yes, it's good to see you. Uh, it did indeed. And one of the lovely people in our community thought that doxing me was a good idea, and when I confronted her about it, she said it was my own fault for having my actual name on here. So um, to this day, she was quite wrong about what she did, but I thought if I'm going to be dealing with people who treat me that way, the least I could do is take my initial out of my name. That may have been more answer than you were asking for, but yes, there was. Yes, it is. And you must be a friend if you remember that about me. How goes how goes taxation law with you? Yeah. Well, Manning, it's a credit to you that you weren't keeping track of that drama. Yeah, and it was interesting because it was a streamer that I don't ever follow, and I just was looking at spdv.space one day, and somebody was live, and I thought, well, I don't really know who that is, and I tuned in, and I kid you not, like 10 seconds after I tuned in, she was reading my name out loud. I about fell off my chair. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And not that I was a regular topic of conversation in her live streams, but she went on to say she didn't know who I was. My answer to that was, well, if you didn't know who I was, then even more reason for you not to be talking about me, but whatever. You got some people in this community with more sense than others. So, is it quarterlies? Not a good time of year to be you. September, October, November, December. Yeah, so quarterlies you're working on. Um, well, you may recall I'm a retired lawyer, so I basically moved on with things. And as we do. And I'm sure, I mean, we're dealing with an entity that is made of nonsense and malice. So I'm sure there will be more nonsense and malice in the future from some quarter, probably not that person. Um, I think we all kind of know when we're in this space, right? Yeah, I do. I try to be sweetness and light as much as possible, but every once in a while, I'll tell people, don't bring the lawyer out. You won't like her. It is one of those things that steels you against the nonsense, though. There's not a lot of names that people can call me where I get offended because I just kind of shrug my shoulders and go, "Yeah, you called me you called me an a-hole. All right, I'm a lawyer. What else you got? You're not going to get under my skin with that." But I didn't appreciate. I don't think any of us really. You know, we're on YouTube. We've got nicknames. We should just be more cautious and more kind with each other when it comes to exposing people's personal information, I think. Goldie, hello. Welcome in. How's your weekend going? Yeah, so Manning, is it tax work that gets you busy this time of year? Because I had to think about the months and realize there must be some quarterly returns that are due. Artist trading cards. Nice. So, artist trading cards are they a little bit bigger? They're what, 3.5 by 2 and they're similar in size to a business card. And people make them in groups, and then sometimes you keep what you make, sometimes you get work in a theme, make a group of them, and trade them with other people. I have a stash of artist trading cards, but I haven't gotten around to them yet. We had a ATC swap at the local craft studio, and I was kind of enthused about it and bought the supplies, and then I had a look at the things that people were trading, and it just um, I I think it was a mismatch, you know, between my style and my level, and the other cards that people were trading were just like one color background with a rubber stamp image in the middle that wasn't embossed, or yeah, and you know, my way is a little different than that. So I think I might have done one, and I ended up. Do you trade in sets of 12? Is my recollection correct, or does each group have like a different number of cards? And then a question for you, Goldie: Do you make 12? Do you make whatever number you're doing? Do you make them the same, or do you make a variety? Okay, is that uh, so? The groups you're in, you make 2 cards, is all? I've gotten better about letting go of stuff, but as I've learned, sometimes with autism, people get um, maybe more attached to the possessions and the work than the average bear does, and it can be hard to let go of stuff. So I do struggle with that a little bit. I don't trade the Pebble paintings, but you know what, Manning? I think that's actually because they're just like they're a really good size. I think I could cut them right down into artist trading card size, or if they, I, I think one of the dimensions is 3.5, 2.5 by 3.5. So I might have to collage them onto a background, but that would be an idea. Pebbles for rebels. Adam Carmona, welcome in. Good to see you, and your lovely sense of humor. Very welcome here. I feel like I've been struggling all week to get a live stream going. Um, well, Manning, you are in the right place for that. Um, I don't think a stream goes by that I don't learn something from people in the chat, or that artists aren't sharing some new technique or some new something. So I mean, I think there's probably some streams where people are experts, and I'm mostly just kind of keeping my hands busy and providing a place for people to meet and to chat. That's you can see none of us are here for the high production quality. Maybe one day, but not today. Now I'm thinking. I bet Maya at Maya, also known as Alice in Art Supply Horderland, and I bet Brad at Drop Short Media would probably be interested in doing a um, an artist trading card swap. Um, Thank you, Goldie, for bringing that up. I don't know. Do people want to? I guess that involves mailing. My brain, my brain is giving me fits today. Just went. Then you'd have to get a post office box, wouldn't you? Oh, maybe, or at least have a central place to mail them to, where they could all be mailed back out from one trusted central place. But I'll now you've got me rethinking artist trading cards. So yeah, so the Pebble art. This is what I was working on earlier. I had put just a wash of some colors that I was experimenting with. I've been on a kick to use watercolor paints that dry. This was just a wash right down here, but you see all of the different textures in it? That's because the pigment precipitates out as the water dries, and that is called granulation. Some watercolor paints will dry very smoothly without any of these effects. Here are some watercolors that I'm getting this background prepared for Pebbles. And you can see there's differences between in the wash between the light and the dark areas, but there's not any gritty, sandy texture to it because the pink and orange ones are not granulating, but these gray-blue ones are. So I finished this painting this week. Fairly pleased with it. I like working off the edges, and I like working with varying borders. That was kind of what I was showing was going on. So there was a wash underneath, and then I taped off the paper and painted the pebbles on top. I'm waiting for some white ink to come, and then I'll put some highlights on that one. I'm sorry, my camera's really close to my work surface. I can't get the entire painting in, but I think I'm working, I'm going to say 9 by 12 on this. 9 by 11. Nope, 9 by 12. And in this one I combined the techniques. We've got the bigger rocks that are painted, and then I filled in the intermediate areas with outlines, and then painted in various colors of wash to color in those pebbles in between. So this is the first one done with this hybrid with the painting technique and then that mindfulness technique that's just meant to be Adam Carmona, if you've got a Honus Wagner card, sure, I'll trade you. I'll trade you a stack of these guys. Okay, so Goldie says one group, this is how they do their artist trading card exchange. One group draws names and then has you email each other so that only the trader gets your address, and there's a list of your emails the trader sees to organize. That's a good idea. That keeps everybody's privacy respected. Oh, did you take it into the shop and say, what would you give me for this? And they went, oh, that's only worth $12, but I mean, I could give you 11. That'd be me. I'd be the kid. I'd be the kid selling the Honus Wagner card for $5 and a popsicle. Alrighty, I'm gonna set this aside so that wash can dry down pretty good, and we'll check it. We might come back to it, but I'm gonna move on to outlining some pebble shapes here. That's always a good time. An upside down plain stamp. Excellent. I have a $2 bill that's off-cut, so the very top of it has the bottom of the next up bill. And I took it into a coin shop once, and the guy did the whole thing. Well, that's worth, like, I could maybe give you $4 for that. And I'm like, one, it's a $2 bill, so those weren't very many of those in circulation. And usually when they're miscuts, the mint or the bank nabs them right out of circulation, so I have no idea what it's worth. I'm sure whoever cleans out my estate will go, hey, look what I found. Oh, sorry about that. I know, those Fabergé eggs are real toothbreakers. Oh, goodness sakes. Nothing for it but to do it. Little paper mutilating ASMR there. So I'm using water media so the paper gets a bit bendy and um, yeah, some of that Fabergé stuff I actually went to an exhibit when I was in Austria. They had some Fabergé items, the ostrich eggs with an entire castle that was made of gold and encrusted with stones and had a little carriage that was kind of, it probably fit inside the ostrich egg, but um, I was just fascinated by it, and I walked around the case so many times that the security guard came and gave me that "I'm going to stand too close to you until you move along, ma'am" treatment. But some of that stuff out of the Fabergé workshop was actually really just incredible. Do 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 do. Um, it was the same year that a mentally disturbed person had taken a hammer into the academia in Florence, Italy, and they had broken broken the foot of Michelangelo's David. So um, I don't know if they're thinking about people who want to purloin things so much as just, somebody with an extra quart of soup or a hammer in their pocket. I'm so baffled by that. I don't understand the impulse to destroy centuries old art, but the myriad ways we humans can be mentally disturbed, right? Now, the way my brain works, I just imagine myself like tiptoeing out, like holding this Fabergé egg, and then my brain's going, then what do I do with it? Where would you put it? You'd have to build a display case. I mean, it's just a whole, I'll just leave it there. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. I had a tour of Europe. I saw Rembrandt's Night Watch, which was a painting that had been slashed, and it's in the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. And you can actually see, um, you can see where the slashes were made in it. I think the conservators put a new lining on the back of the canvas, but there were limits to how much conservation, and I think they also made a deliberate choice to allow that injury to the painting to remain visible, just as a lesson, I guess. But that particular painting in its Oh, it must be feet tall by 12 or 14 feet wide. And anyway, to my eye, I mean, they're beautiful paintings, but they are kind of dark and they're kind of brown, and they show kind of old-fashioned people. There's not a lot of action in them, but I look at them and to my way of thinking, I think, wow, that's really old and it survived all of this time. So that's remarkable. But as far as being in a museum and staring at, I'd much rather look at something like Van Gogh's work that's more colorful and dynamic. And fortunately for me, the Van Gogh Museum is kind of right across the street from the Rijksmuseum, so there you go. Out the door and across the street. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Adam says he's a fan of surrealism. The Salvador Dali type, or... If you think Salvador Dali's paintings were wild, you ought to try reading some of his recipes. Oh, that's right. That is right. Dali's, there's a museum in Clearwater with Dali works. Yep. Yeah, a cookbook that's got a recipe from Dali, and it's just an absurdist recipe for lobster. um, People have actually tried to cook that, but it's not. It's just meant to bend your mind, not to expand your palate. I like the surrealism with a bit of absurdist on top of it. The side of absurd sauce. I wish I could remember more of it now. I think it's something that's encased in an aspic or a gelatin of some kind. Uh, Not gonna lie, I kind of want to make it. So, Adam, do you happen to know? Um, I know there were a couple of streams going, and I think Nance Drew was saying she was going to stream again tonight with one of her firesides. Oh, yeah. Um, I live near a town called Silverton, Oregon, and they have a number of murals that were Rockwell murals. Um, so whenever I go sightseeing through there, I like to be about a half a block away and take pictures of people who are taking pictures of the Rockwell murals. I really like Art Nouveau, um, and there's a lot of utilitarian things, a lot of furniture and textiles that come out of that period. I am especially fond of work by an artist called Emile Gallet, Galle with an accent. Um, he worked in glass, this beautiful jacketed glass with multi-layers and these botanical subjects that were stylized with this wonderful quality of the whiplash line is something that's a hallmark in Art Nouveau. Wyeth and Hopper, the realist. Yeah. Can you artists like that had photographs to work from as their source material, so they were able to achieve a realism. They could use opaque projectors to help with that too. But can you imagine an artist like Hopper if he'd had a computer and digital work? Bringing it back around, Wyeth's painting of Christina, there's some theorizing that the subject of that painting, which is a young woman seated in a field, but she's looking uphill out of the frame with her arm outstretched. And there's some speculation that she was autistic. That painting, the way there's a mood about it that just has always been very compelling to me. When you look at it, it just makes you kind of quietly look and wonder what she's thinking and what she's reaching for. It's a very still quality, but I find it a very moving piece. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They were master colorists, yeah. Yeah, do you have a favorite Hopper piece? I realize it's the popular choice, but I really enjoy Nighthawks. Like every time I look at it, I think of another story about the people that are sitting there, and you look at their hats and wonder what they've done that day or what they're waiting for. I always think about the the soda jerk that's behind the counter, and he's kind of dressed for like a sunny daytime, but it's night. Mm. No, there's always somebody up and about. Anyway, sometimes these pebble drawings flow very quickly and smoothly, and then other times a bit more of a challenge. This one isn't challenging, but I think I will be defining the stone shapes a little bit more in this next step than I usually do. Oh. Too dark, too light. Yeah, and today now we've got people who are working with 3D printers, and art in the 21st century is so different. In fact, you don't even have to use the mouse, and just tell tell AI, yeah, make me Jesus on a bicycle. All right, make it more Jesus. Make it a BMX bike. What was that? I think the prompt that I'm thinking of, the person was like hippie Jesus on a BMX bike, and then I think they must have done 6 iterations of that, where each time they just told the AI to make it more Jesus, more hippie. It was pretty wild by the final iteration. I was like, that's really colorful. I'd buy that on a t-shirt, maybe. But if you'd been an artist painting it, it would have just taken, I don't know how long it would have taken, a while. that's life as a graphic artist. I did an an internship as a graphic artist back when I was in school in the 70s and 80s. It was really thought that trying to make a living as a fine artist was completely unreasonable for somebody to do, and so I was directed into exploring a job. The unfortunate thing about that, you do get to draw stuff and make art all day, but everything you make is what somebody else is telling you to do. And I can remember one of the assignments was draw a desk. So I drew this desk, and then I got feedback. They sent it back, and they said, "No, make it a teacher's desk." Okay, so I went from a student desk to a teacher's desk, and it had a center drawer and then a drawers on the side that dropped down, and it had 3 drawers. And they wrote it back, and they said, "Make it with 4 drawers on the left-hand side." I think that might have been close to one of my last days on the job. It was just for a flyer, and I was a young person, so I didn't have much patience for being told what to do. And thank goodness I didn't head off to school to really learn how to be a graphic artist or do that work, because I just had no temperament for it. Years later, a few years later, a handful of years later, I would work in a sign shop where your customers do tell you what they want, and you can get a sign done and have the customer come in and go, "Yeah, no, that's not what I wanted at all." And we certainly remade a few, but most of the time people would come in and they'd look at the work and they'd go, "Wow, I like what you do. Can you make me something that's kind of like this?" And they'd turn us loose to make signs, and we got enough free rein to be creative that it was a bearable job. And frankly, I was happier as a sign painter than I ever was as a lawyer. So should have just stuck with those things, but get talked into things. People go, "You're smart. You should go do this. You should. Boy, anybody starts coming up saying you should, it's a good time to say, "No, if that's a great idea, you go do it." What you should is do what you think you should do. Those "you should" people are dangerous. I was. Kid, if I'd had something like the AI image generator, I could have just smiled at people and said, "Sure, 4 drawers, I'll be right back." It wouldn't have been anywhere near as frustrating as spending, 45 minutes drafting something out, and we were making things that were for reproduction, so you couldn't just erase, because when it was photographed to be turned into the graphic image using printing, any straight line would show up. So you could draft stuff if you were using non-photo blue, which is actually a light blue, pretty close to this, and the photocopier or the camera wouldn't pick it up, hence the name non-photo blue. But you couldn't draft the whole thing in non-photo blue, send it for approval, and then ink it in. Unfortunately. I mean, and stuff to be young. I'm not getting enough oomph in this. I think I need some paint. Hello, yellow. Yeah, when I was a young person, we kept ourselves busy in the summer, so I and I often worked, especially high school and in college. I was always working while I was in school, so and I like to try different things. So I spent a summer sewing carnival tents and hot air balloon envelopes. Um, Another summer that I spent sewing draperies and bedspreads for commercial use, which means hotels and timeshares, that kind of stuff. Sign shop. Worked for the BLM for a while. I just think the more varied it was, the more interested I was in going and a little bit of a try. I think it's a little bit challenging for a lot of young people, especially if they've got adults in their life that are telling them things like, "You'll never make a living as fine art. It's just a fad. You'll outgrow it." And the thing that stayed consistent all of my life, from I haven't always been practicing that. You can have taken years off, but I've always come back to making art with my hands in some form or fashion. I was, in the finger paints and Crayolas before I ever could talk. And I hope that parents today encourage their kids to just go ahead with that thing that they seem to love, the thing that they can lose themselves in. Because there are ways to make a living doing creative work. Mm. They really, Adam says, people love to crush dreams. Um, I agree. I don't know why we do it to each other, but for some, for a lot of people, it's just quite easy to say, nah, no, don't even try. If you can get somebody in your corner who's encouraging your dreams and lifts you up and says, good job, that was awesome, do it again, try harder, go bigger. And, I see a lot of that around here, too. There is, uh, there's some picking at each other and being critical, but there's also a lot of people who are lifting each other up around here. And no face. Oh, I want what you're smoking. That was a dreamy. Thank you. Yeah, I've had to take a big old break from from the things we light on fire and inhale since my the great cardiac event of 2024. Um, that's the thing about the cardiologists. They're just not keen on you. They're like, you tell them, yeah, but I'm going to smoke. And they're like, oh, no, 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 no. Those guys aren't much fun. I'm like, gonna live another 25 years, but no partying on the weekends. Uh, really? I'm, re- I'm retired from all that. I want some life in my life, man. It's getting it's getting better though. It's coming along. I just realized. I think. Let's see, March, April, May, June, July, August, September. Yeah, so I hit the 6 month mark. Um, uh, After getting all those, I got 6 stents put in my heart in March, and the cardiologist was like, "We got to get you out to 6 months, and then we'll take the next steps." So back when he told me that, I wasn't going great, and I was really was it when those impasses in life where you're wondering, am I gonna, is that gonna happen? And it did. So yay. Well, I think that yellow perked it up a bit, a little cheerier. My cardi, ack. Sorry, I couldn't, I couldn't stop myself. A Cardi A or a Cardi B. Damn, that girl's got some. She's some bold. It's Cardi B for bold. Have you seen her? No Face. Did you see Cardi B on Hot Ones? I think she was on. I'm not sure about the music, but I always I find her an interesting human being and awfully entertaining. I really ought to. I really ought to know by now. Probably not. Probably not going to take the lesson at this point. I get that old. I got the double whammy. I've got family on both sides with cardiac issues, and some stuff, and then, as Wilfred Brimley said, the diabetes. That diabetes. Oh, it's a pain in the butt. But I try not to let myself like go down the path of just mugwumping about it and feeling like really put upon over it, because like if I'd been born 200 years ago, I would have never made it as far as I have. I wouldn't have seen this. I wouldn't have seen the 60s for sure. So, it's kind of gravy time. I can kind of look at everything like, wow, that's a bonus. I do find, after you go through something like that, you can change your attitude about stuff. I find that I'm highly likely when something is aggravating me, I tend to go, you know what? I don't have to do this anymore. I'll move right on to the next thing. And there it goes. Hmm. Well, Well, gentlemen, and anybody hanging out there, I think we're just a little bit over an hour, and yeah, I'm not really drawn to yellow. I'll use it every once in a while, but it's not the first color I reach for. But I think most things, like if you're making a bouquet of flowers, you might have like oranges and reds and purples, and it's a pretty good looking bouquet. And then you put in just a little touch of yellow here and there, and then it's a beautiful bouquet. I think yellow's a good color for making other stuff pop and sing a little bit. Well, thank you, Adam. It was lovely to chat with you, and it was lovely to chat with everybody and spend some time with folks doing a little bit of art on a Saturday evening. Um, I think there's probably a, a handful more of things to be enjoyed this Saturday evening, so um, I'm gonna I'm gonna I'm gonna end here. And thanks again, everybody, for likes, for hanging out, for spending time, for chatting. I hope that you have a great weekend, a great evening. Hi, Rika. Hi, it's good to see you. Um, and just a reminder to take take extra care with yourselves. Be kind to yourself. Do a little something extra to just boost your health a little bit or boost your attitude. Make yourself a nice cup of tea. Anything like that. Uh, so be kind and thanks again. We'll see you next time. Good night.